Welcome to yet another episode of the Jay Lex Podcast. I am your host, Jay Lex. You can find me on Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify, either under the Jay Lex Podcast or Jay Lex Podcast. I appreciate your continued support as I try to grow this platform and this podcast out, and I really appreciate you if you ride along with me. All right, today's topic, the 3 S's. Now, what do I mean by when I say 3 S's? And I'm not just going to talk about the black community. I'm going to talk about other communities as well, because this is a big deal. I know right now, I think I'd read it somewhere in China right now, in China, I should say, because the economy is so poor right now, they're actually selling designer handbags just to make some extra money, because obviously people don't need it when, the economy's tanking. But what do I mean by when I talk about the 3 S's? The 3 S's mean status, style, and symbolism. Whether it's the black community or most other communities, but I'm mostly focused on the black community because we obviously have to do better. There are certain things that people seem to be attached to. They seem to have a feeling towards. One of those things is name brand apparel, or name brands, I should say. There seems to be these feelings, this attachment to these different brands and things along those lines. These names. I don't fully comprehend it. Now, full disclosure, I know some of you are gonna sit there and say, "Well, what are we supposed to do? We're not supposed to buy nice things." That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you shouldn't match your clothing. Lord knows I go to the gym a lot, and more times than not, I've got sneakers that go along with shorts and workout pants and all that other stuff. It's the same thing when I go out. I have multiple jeans and shirts, and because I understand that the way you present yourself is a way of branding. I get all that. What I'm talking about when I talk about the 3 S's are the things that people seem to be more worried about than either their individual advancement or the advancement of their particular community. Just rock with me for a minute. Some of you are not going to like what I have to say. I told you this in episode 1. But as I've mentioned before in the last episode, there seems to be these emotions, these feelings that people have, when in actuality, all these things are products, or for that matter, services. That's what money does for you. It buys you products and or services. And instead of trying to grow a community, we instead, or I shouldn't say, not all of you obviously, but some of you are more worried about how you look to the outside world. You have people out here who have their relationships like living through Instagram. Instagram is a tool that you should be using to grow a business, to promote yourself, promote what you're doing, not your relationships. And you can do whatever you want. I don't ultimately care, but this is what I'm talking about. You don't get residuals from Instagram for showing how much you love your significant other. At least not that I know of. It's nice every so often to see a nice dog video, things along those lines. I'm getting a little bit off topic here. But what my message is here is simple. The 3 S's. Style, status, and symbolism. Style, obviously, clothing, accessories, things along those lines. Things that you wear, how you present yourself out to the world. Symbolism. Name brands. Nike, Gucci, Prada. The list goes Hermes. I think it's a Birkin bag, which I just found out recently. It's through Hermes. So people are going out and buying, or in China selling these because their communist economy is tanking. And status, how people look at you in the world, which I understand to an extent. But those things don't equate to your community or you being better. And I know, look, you don't even need to do a scientific, go during the holiday season. We're about 3 months away from the holiday rush, another year, another holiday rush. Go to, if you live close enough, go to an outlet mall. Wherever it is that you live, country, world, wherever the case might be. See who's standing online and where they're standing online. And you'll know exactly what I'm talking about as it pertains to symbolism, style, and status. Okay, I don't live too far from Woodbury Commons in Harriman, New York. It's one of the most popular ones in the country. People from New York City, they take buses up during the holiday season. A lot of Asian people come up. They go there, they buy a bunch of things to bring back to, Japan or wherever it is that they're from. See who's standing in line and where. And mind you, the last time I went up there was a couple years ago. It was at the height of Rona. It's cold out. It's not upstate New York, but it's upper New York. So it's cold, it's windy, there's snow on the ground, there's ice on the ground. Where did I see a lot of black people standing? Outdoors with masks on, because they were only allowed to let a certain amount of people into these places. Prada, Gucci, Nike, all these name brand places. Do these people own stock options? Do they own a percentage of these places? No. They go, they take their money, and they give it to these corporations. And these are the same people who will sit there and say, buy black, which I'm all for, as long as your product and or service comes with respect, comes with great customer service. I'm all for it. But those same people will go out and spend endless amounts of money. Under Armour is another one. Although I don't think there was a line in front of Under Armour. It's all about the external, and it's not about the internal. I'll give you a primary example. There's a lot of talk out here between men and women. There's all this drama going on, really just distracting you from what's really going on in the world. You have a lot of women out here who will go and who will buy Jimmy Choo shoes, Prada dress, so depending upon their hair situation, get a wig, nails, the whole deal. The whole deal won't go see a mental health specialist, won't work on the trauma that they went through in the past, but will go and repeatedly buy things that will only show the external, but then expect a man to come in and have to deal with the nonsense from their past. And that not to say nonsense is things that they did. Look, things happened to them. A lot of people grew up impoverished, grew up in messed up situations. Once again, I'm not saying you can't have nice things. I'm saying you will get nice things in spite of the fact that you have real stuff, real things that you need to work on in your life. I'm not telling you that you have to be, Steve Jobs. You ain't got to wear New Balances and dad pants and look like you're poor. You don't have to. But there has to be a balance. And I want to talk to people of color today. I want to talk to people of color right now. Because a lot of you, even though your ancestors helped to build this country, are not getting what you're supposed to be getting. And what do I mean by that? A lot of people of color are okay with symbolism. Just recently, they built a hip-hop museum in the South Bronx. Great. Wonderful. I think that's awesome. Meanwhile, your mayor in New York City is giving housing and monies to immigrants who came south of the border. Now, I know part of that also is they probably get money from the government to do it. I know all that. But why are you okay with this? I know what a lot of you are going to say. You're going to say, well, we're all technically immigrants, and I get that part. We're all immigrants. Our parents immigrated here. I get that. I completely and totally, I get that whole ideology. But that doesn't change the fact that you're still here now. Most of you who are going to listen to the show, we're not here illegally. Yes, I know. There's certain laws that I don't agree with, but you know what? Having a border is one of them. And all these quote-unquote Democrats who sit there and say we should have open borders to everybody, we're the only country in the world spewing that nonsense. Where is the backlash? Where is the, well, this doesn't make any sense. Clearly, I feel sorry for those who came from messed up situations. My parents are immigrants, but they came here, they worked their behinds off. You know, back in the 70s and 80s, people weren't getting $20 an hour, $15 an hour. People were getting $3 an hour. They worked their asses off. They became citizens. And they did it the way that they were supposed to do it. Why does this next group of people get free housing, free this, free that, on your dime? And what do you get? You get a hip-hop museum in the South Bronx. Who is going to the South Bronx? Anyway, I'm going to leave the South Bronx alone for a minute here. Here's the reality. A lot of black people are about status, symbolism, and style. All the external. Symbolism doesn't mean anything. How many years have black people sat there and asked the government for reparations? How many decades? Most of us weren't born when they were asking for reparations, and you still have gotten nothing. Once again, as I talked about in the last episode, we have to take the emotions out of it. If a particular party is not doing what they need to do to help you and yours, you need to kick them to the curb. I know black conservatism seems to be on the rise here a little bit. A lot of people talking about that they're black conservatives, black this, black that, and I think that's great. I'm not personally, I'm independent, but that's different. That's a different story. But the reality is, you have to get more. You have a $1 trillion buying power. As I've mentioned to you in a previous episode, this world is transactional. It is not emotional, it is transactional. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Transactions. Credit cards, cash, etc. If you vote for somebody and they're not supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing for you, then you need to kick those people to the curb. The Democratic Party, and I'm not telling you to vote Republican, by the way. You find a candidate who works for you. But the Democratic Party, the mainstream Democratic Party, has done little for black people. When there was all that, there were Asian hate crimes going on in New York City. How quickly did Asian people get a anti-Asian hate bill? Less than a year? Less than a year. And clearly nobody wants to see violence against any particular group of people. But the reality is, they got it quickly because they mattered politically. And what a lot of these groups are basically, or a lot of these politicians are basically saying is, you black people don't matter. Or you matter very little. Then when's the only time you hear about politicians going to pander for the black vote? Election season. Oh, they end up in the black churches. Or they end up, going to the barbershops, sitting there getting their photo op haircut. We've seen it all. Good portion of you still rock with the Clintons, given the human rights violations and crimes that they've committed. I think I talked about it the last episode. Joe Biden, despite everything he's done to help further ruin this country, has a 60, almost 2/3 of black people still rock with him. 2/3. How in the does that work? And then what do you end up having? You have a bunch of infighting between black people. Those who are a little more conservative, those who have worked hard and built something, those who have a different point of view, and what are they called? Coons, sellouts, Uncle Toms, all these shaming tactics. And I think we're finally at the point where a good portion of these black people are like, we don't care. One of the big issues in the black community is the high single mother rate. There's other communities as well. Don't get it twisted, but I'm specifically talking about black people today. Right now, I should say. It's something like 80%. And women out here jumping on black Twitter. Yes, a subsection of Twitter, because y'all don't have your own social media. Complaining about black men dating outside their race. No, these men should be coming back to the community to save them. That's Dr. Umar Johnson's theory. You have got to be kidding me. Why would any man go and save a bunch of people who don't want to save themselves? It is not the responsibility of responsible black men and women, to be fair, and women, to come back to a community that continuously shoots itself in the proverbial foot. Why would we do that? Those people who do things like that don't have a gym membership, don't take care of themselves, but will buy all kinds of external things to cover up what's really going on. Now, I'm not going to say self-hatred or anything like that, but you know you went through some things, and you refuse to go get help. And I don't want to hear about there's no resources there. The resources are in your closet. I remember listening to Alex Rodriguez, one of the interviews that he did, talking about his real estate portfolio. You know what he was talking about? He was 18 years old. He was looking to buy a duplex. I think out in Miami, somewhere like that, a rental property. And he needs to come up with the down payment for it. So what did he do? 18 years old, gets a new signing bonus. What does he do? He goes and buys a couple Rolexes. But he needs to put a down payment so that he can get this apartment building. What does he do? He sells the Rolexes. How many of you who are constantly complaining would go and do that? Would go and sell your Rolex so that you could go and buy yourself a rental property? Or get the down payment for it, I should say. How many of you? That's forward thinking. You see, that Rolex is wonderful to have. It's a great status symbol. But it's not going to do anything for you. All it does is tell time. Once again, you can have nice things. But what you really need to do is you need to fix the internal. Being in better shape. Going to see a mental health specialist if you need to. And I talked about being in shape. Yoga, mixed martial arts, weight training, whatever your particular poison is. Or fitness poison. Going to see a mental health specialist. All the shoes and all the cars and all the toys in the world are not going to change the fact that you still need to work on yourself. And having a Birkin bag or having a Mercedes-Benz is not going to change that. There's too much going on. And I'm going to go off topic a little bit here, but one of the things that really irks me is people wanting to make, quote unquote, all these changes, but not wanting to do all these things, but not making the necessary changes. Y'all talk about wanting reparations. What do you think is going to happen if that day comes? How much money do you think they're going to offer you? $1 million? $2 million? $5 million? 10? No. They're going to offer you $100,000. If that. 50. One-time payment. That you probably have to pay taxes on. When what you should be doing, if you had real leadership, is you should be going and if you had real leaders and going and saying, we want $50 million per person. They gave $5 trillion to the top 1% of the 1% during the height of COVID. Yeah, I got 14. First they got 600. Then Biden promised you 2,000. Then he said we're going to give you 1,400 because they already got to 2,000. And you barely got that. He had to actually fight for that. Because remember, Nancy Pelosi on the, I don't remember if it was the Senate floor or the House floor, whatever the case might be, said $600 would suffice. Meanwhile, those congressmen and women are making millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars annually. But they're going to offer you $50 million, or they're going to offer you $50,000, maybe $100 if you're lucky. But what you should be saying is, we start at $50 million per. Because as I've mentioned before, your vote is not an emotional reaction, but a business transaction. You want black people to constantly vote Democrat, or you want black people to start voting more Republican like they used to do before the 1960s, then you need to give us something. Oh, no, you don't want to do that? Fine. We're going to go vote for the other side, or we're not going to go vote at all. And we want $50 trillion for urban development. That is how the game is played. That is how it is done. So please, and this is not just black people, this is also, you go to rural America, it's the same thing. They vote Republican every single time and get nothing. I've been to many rural towns. Trust me when I say there's barely anything there. The roads have endless potholes. These people live in poverty, but they will vote Republican. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of status. But that can't be the end game. You know, going onto Instagram, like you see with a lot of these rappers, flashing money is not the end game. Or should not be, I should say. What it should be is ownership of property, land. How do you think the Rockefellers are worth $2 trillion? They own land everywhere. The Saudis make their money in oil. Now, you and your family may not ever see $2 trillion, but you should be doing something collectively. And if you're not going to do it collectively, then leave those individuals alone who want to do something. Stop calling them names. Y'all not out here doing anything of any significance. But you're happy about a hip-hop museum. Or a black history museum in Washington, D.C. Where's your reparations at? Because you know what's going to happen. If hypothetically you got those reparations, let's say it happens. You get $50 million per person. You know what's the first thing that's going to happen? Everybody's going to go out and buy an expensive car. They're going to buy a house they have no business living in. They're going to pay for expensive steak dinners that they have no business paying for. They're going to do it for an extended period of time. It's literally going to be like winning the lottery. Instead of going out, buying land, working together to build various distribution centers and things along those lines. I know this is going to happen. Now, I don't personally think people are ever going to get reparations because it's going to be too expensive, and quite frankly, politicians don't take you seriously. But if it did, I know exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a bunch of people living in Greenwich, Connecticut, one of the most overrated places on the planet, or Orange County, or whatever other, exclusive neighborhood is. And they're not going to do anything with that money. And they're not going to leave a legacy. And then they're going to be down to like their last 100,000 wondering what happened. And I'll tell you exactly what happened. The 3 S's. Style, status, symbolism. And it has to stop. Or what's going to end up happening is the Democratic Party is no longer going to pander to you. They're going to pander to all those illegal immigrants that they're putting in blue cities. Because they outnumber you already, or close to it, if I'm not mistaken. That's why they're letting them in. But I guess I'm a conspiracy theorist. Anyway, thank you for tuning into the Jay Lex Podcast. You can catch me on those forms of social media that I mentioned before. I will speak to you guys soon. Take care. Bye.